Whenever I drive by an old barn or an old house that's all fallen to pieces, I always kind of stop and wonder, at what point did it get so bad that the people who lived here or worked here just decided to pack it all in and walk away from it? You know, to leave an old place like this, abandoned, to fall apart. I got to imagine there's all kinds of stories here. Stories from how it used to be, you know, when Grandpa stayed up all night in the barn to look after the cow who was giving birth to a calf, or maybe about the first year when they built this place and how hard it was to make everything work, you know, or the time when, you know, the old tractor parked in the barn just wouldn't start and they had to use the horses to plow the fields. When I was a kid, I used to come up north with my family to visit my great-grandparents. Not too far from here, actually, just down the road. We'd go to their old farmhouse and visit. It wasn't in good shape back then. In fact, their barn wasn't being used for anything except to park their old cars in. You know, I can't help but think that their place probably looks a lot like this one now. You know, all fallen to pieces and decay. And you know what? It's not the way it was meant to be. You know, this place, it used to be full of life too, but then decay got to it, and now, well, it's just ruins. The Bible tells the story in Genesis chapter 3 of how Adam and Eve, how they broke God's law. They sinned, and they hid from God. It's not the way it was meant to be either. They were meant to be in a relationship with Him, but sin, it altered their very existence. And then in verse 13, Adam and Eve, they come face to face with God, who looks at them, I think with heartbreak, some sadness in His voice. He says, "What have you done?" You see, the prize of His creation had made a mess of the world. And that wasn't the way it was supposed to be. But you know what? God doesn't leave them in their mess, and He doesn't leave us in our mess either. No, He calls us out of it. He rescues us from our sin, and He calls us to live differently. In a world that isn't the way it was supposed to be, you and I, we get to live differently. We can see through all the mess the way God intended for us to live.